My name is Amelia Foster, and at 27 years old, my parents skipped my graduation for my brother's birthday, leaving me crushed. A year later, I received an award, and he asked, "How did you do it?" If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. I was 24 the year I finally realized my parents would never see me the way I needed them to. Growing up, our family made it abundantly clear who mattered. My younger brother, Ethan, was the golden child. Every birthday, every school achievement, every weekend getaway was framed as a celebration of him. And if I ever dared to share my own accomplishments, they were minimized, ignored, or, worse, used as a punchline for some backhanded lesson about humility. I worked tirelessly through high school, juggling multiple part-time jobs while maintaining top grades. College was no different. Long nights, internships, group projects. I poured every ounce of myself into my studies. And when the day came for my graduation, I thought maybe, just maybe, my parents would finally recognize me. I was wrong. The morning of the ceremony, my phone buzzed with a single message from my mother. "Sorry, Amelia, we can't make it. Don't forget Ethan's birthday dinner next month. It's a major event, and you're expected to attend." No congratulations. No acknowledgement. Just a reminder that my brother's life somehow eclipsed mine. I stared at the message, my chest tightening, feeling a mix of rage, hurt, and, strangely, relief. Relief that the illusion of parental support was shattered once and for all. I didn't attend the ceremony. I stayed in my small apartment near campus, walking through the empty rooms that smelled faintly of old books and takeout. I thought about every late night, every sacrifice I'd made. My parents would never celebrate me, and Ethan, in all his oblivious charm, would continue to bask in their approval. That was their world, and I had finally seen it for what it was. I spent that evening alone, not crying, not screaming, just observing. I realized something powerful. I didn't need their recognition. For years, I had measured my worth against their approval, and it had left me hollow. Now, for the first time, I understood that I could define my own path. The next 6 months were a study in quiet resolve. I stopped checking my parents' social media, stopped reading the carefully curated posts about Ethan's triumphs. I devoted myself entirely to a software project I had been building secretly, one that I hoped could make a real difference in the world. No one in my family knew. No one needed to. Their absence was a gift, providing the space to focus without interference. And yet the gnawing sting of neglect lingered. When friends asked about my family, I smiled and deflected. The truth, my parents' favoritism, their selective love, was too heavy, too painful to share. I told myself again and again that I didn't need their validation. But late at night, when the apartment was quiet and I could hear only the hum of the refrigerator, I allowed myself a small, private acknowledgement of the betrayal, that they had failed me, and that failure would fuel me. Even then, a spark of strategy flickered. I realized that if they believed I could be controlled, they would underestimate me. And in underestimation, there is power. I would focus on my work, build my success quietly, and let the consequences of their neglect unfold in ways they could never predict. It wasn't revenge, not yet. It was preparation. That night, I made a silent vow. The world would see what I was capable of, not because my parents or Ethan finally paid attention, but because I refused to let them dictate my value. They had spent years defining me by absence, by comparison, by what I was not. Now I would define myself by what I could accomplish. I was no longer a daughter waiting for approval. I was Amelia Foster, and the story of my life was finally mine to write. The months after graduation were a blur of work, focus, and quiet determination. I poured myself into my software project, often working through the night while the city slept. I didn't check social media. I didn't answer calls from my parents or Ethan. Their world, carefully curated, filled with public praise for Ethan, was no longer mine to navigate. I had my own, and I was building it from scratch. Ethan, of course, was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing behind my quiet diligence. He continued to post carefully staged snapshots of his perfect life, brunches with friends, promotions at work, weekend trips. Each image was a reminder of the selective affection my family lavished on him. But these displays, once a source of pain, had now become markers of opportunity. They underestimated me. That made me invisible, and invisibility can be a powerful weapon. I watched as my parents continued their subtle manipulations. My mother called occasionally, ostensibly checking in, but each conversation was laden with subtle pressure, reminders of family obligations, hints that Ethan might need help, suggestions that I might be missing out on opportunities by being too independent. My father's emails carried a different tone, strategic, analytical, presenting potential financial partnerships, and career advice that came veiled as guidance but felt like control. I listened, smiled politely, and let their words wash over me. I didn't react. I didn't need to. I was learning their rhythm, anticipating the moves they would make, and plotting my own response, not impulsively, but with careful strategy. Ethan eventually caught wind of my progress, though not directly. Rumors in our industry began to circulate. A young developer was gaining attention for her innovative project, one that promised to disrupt the usual patterns. He tried to insert himself into the narrative, attending industry mixers and networking events in my orbit, but his attempts were clumsy, transparent, and entirely predictable. He dropped names, referenced shared family connections, and attempted to imply insider knowledge, but anyone with experience could see the gaps. I watched him flounder from a distance, my patience steady. Every overreach, every awkward gesture, every attempt to claim credit for connections he hadn't earned only reinforced my strategy. I was learning how to turn their assumptions, Ethan's arrogance, my parents' manipulations, against them without ever raising my voice. And then, almost overnight, my work began to attract attention. Invitations arrived to speak at conferences. Articles highlighted my project. Investors expressed interest. I had kept it all quiet, building momentum behind the scenes, and now the world began to notice. Not my family, no, they were still operating on old assumptions, but those who mattered professionally. One evening, while preparing a presentation for a significant industry gala, I received a message from an unfamiliar number. It was Ethan. "Amelia, how are you doing all of this without us? Without Mom and Dad?" I smiled faintly, not from amusement, but from the satisfaction of inevitability. He expected me to justify myself, to explain my process, to reassure him that he still had some influence. But I didn't respond. I had no need to. He had just glimpsed the beginning of a world where I wasn't defined by him or our parents, and for the first time, he was unsettled. The gala itself was a revelation. The room buzzed with industry professionals, journalists, and potential investors. I walked in, not with the anxiety I once felt under my parents' gaze, but with a calm awareness. This was my stage. I knew where to stand, when to speak, and how to present my work with clarity, precision, and impact. And there he was, Ethan, hovering near the edges of the room. His eyes flicked toward me with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, but no real understanding. He tried to position himself near an influential investor, hoping proximity might grant him authority. But his efforts were shallow, and I noticed. I smiled to myself. The game had changed, and he didn't know the rules. After my presentation, I spoke with several key figures, receiving genuine praise for my work. Meanwhile, Ethan lingered, awkward and restless, his attempts at conversation faltering under scrutiny. My parents observed from a distance, perfectly dressed, maintaining appearances, but their calm exteriors betrayed a flicker of unease. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that their typical strategies, subtle manipulation, selective praise, implied influence, might not work anymore. That night, I walked home alone, my mind buzzing not with anxiety, but with quiet satisfaction. I wasn't seeking revenge, not yet. I was gathering evidence, understanding patterns, and preparing for the moment when their entitlement would meet reality. Every missed call, every ignored message, every awkward encounter was a brick in the foundation of my plan. I had learned that the world could recognize talent even when family did not. And for the first time, I understood that my parents' and Ethan's influence was irrelevant to my success. I was no longer seeking approval. I was claiming my life. 10 months after that silent period of relentless work, something extraordinary happened. I was invited to speak at a major national award ceremony for innovation in technology. My heart raced, not from nerves, but from the knowledge that I was about to stand in a spotlight I had earned entirely on my own. No family validation, no Ethan interference, no borrowed credibility. Just me, my project, and the quiet culmination of months of persistence. Backstage, I adjusted my notes and breathed deeply. I could hear the murmur of the crowd beyond the curtain, the subtle rustle of anticipation. Then I saw him, Ethan. He wasn't with my parents this time. They hadn't shown up. It was just him, and for the first time he seemed small, unsure, almost vulnerable. His gaze followed every movement I made, a mixture of amazement and disbelief painted across his features. How had I done this? How had I built something significant, visible, and respected without their guidance or his help? His lips parted slightly, muttering questions under his breath that I couldn't hear clearly, but I could feel the weight behind them. He expected an explanation, a justification, an opportunity to claim influence. He would get nothing. When I walked onto the stage to receive my award, the applause was genuine. I felt the energy of the room, real admiration for my work, real recognition for the value I had created. My mind, however, lingered on Ethan. The astonishment on his face was priceless. He had been conditioned to expect that I would falter, that our parents' absence would define my limits. He was witnessing firsthand the collapse of those assumptions. After the ceremony, I didn't rush to celebrate with anyone. Instead, I retreated to a quiet table with a few colleagues who had supported my project from the beginning. Simple laughter, shared memories of late nights and coding marathons, and a sense of personal triumph filled the space. This night was mine, truly mine. Then the messages started arriving. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Initially, I ignored it, assuming routine congratulations from peers. But soon, I realized the texts weren't from colleagues. They were from my family. My parents' numbers, Ethan's number, and even a few relatives I hadn't heard from in months. The tone of their messages was cautious, almost investigative. My mother wrote, "Amelia, we saw the news. Congratulations. We should talk soon." No pride, no acknowledgement of years of neglect, just an attempt to reinsert themselves into my life. Ethan's texts were even more revealing. "This is remarkable. I didn't think you had it. We should meet up. Perhaps I can help you expand." I laughed quietly, a soft exhale of satisfaction. He had spent his life relying on privilege, familiarity, and family influence. Now, confronted with my independence and achievement, he was desperate. The following weeks were a careful dance. My parents tried subtle manipulations. They called about family obligations, or sent emails that implied mentorship and guidance. Ethan attempted to intrude into my professional circles, awkwardly trying to leverage his connections or name drop to appear relevant. But I had learned their patterns, understood their tactics, and I let them flounder. At industry gatherings, Ethan hovered near influential figures, trying to insert himself into conversations, but every gesture screamed panic. His charm faltered under scrutiny, his attempts at proximity meaningless. My parents observed from a distance, carefully maintaining their curated image, but the tension in their postures betrayed them. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that their influence over me and over Ethan was diminishing. Then came my first public feature. A major industry magazine covered my project and praised its innovation. Within hours, Ethan's messages erupted again. "Amelia, halt. How are you doing this without assistance? Why haven't you told us? This isn't fair." Fair. The audacity. After years of favoritism, dismissals, and selective recognition, now he invoked fairness. I didn't respond. I smiled quietly instead, savoring the slow, inevitable unraveling of his entitlement. That evening, I reviewed my presentation notes for the next gala. The room would be filled with journalists, investors, and potential partners. And this time, Ethan arrived uninvited. An audacious move, but predictable. He wasn't alone. He had brought a high-profile investor in tow, hoping proximity might give him credibility. But I knew better. His gesture was transparent, desperate, and ineffective. I walked into the gala calm and confident. My presentation was flawless, each statistic precise, each story carefully crafted. The applause was real. Recognition was earned. Ethan tried to intrude but faltered under professional scrutiny, each word, each gesture betraying panic and inexperience. My parents were present too, sitting rigidly, trying to maintain appearances while their calm exterior slowly cracked. For the first time, I realized something profound. Their control had always been an illusion. Their favoritism, their manipulation, their carefully constructed narratives, none of it could touch the work I had done, the respect I had earned. Standing in that room, receiving praise, seeing the subtle panic on Ethan's face, and the tension in my parents' expressions, I understood fully. The rules had changed, and I was ready for what came next. After the gala, I had a quiet moment alone in the hallway, reviewing my thoughts. Ethan approached cautiously, attempting casual confidence, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Amelia, can we talk?" he asked, trying to sound nonchalant. His eyes darted around as if fearing someone might overhear. I nodded politely. "Sure, outside," I said, guiding him to a quieter hallway, away from the bustling crowd. Once we were alone, he spoke quickly, almost panicked. "I don't understand. 1 year ago, you were invisible in our world. Now, national recognition, awards, investors. How?" I let the silence linger, letting him feel the weight of his own disbelief. Then I said simply, "I focused on what mattered to me, work that creates impact, not work that seeks approval from those who consistently dismissed me." His jaw tightened. "But, Mom and Dad, they can open doors. You'll hit walls without them." I laughed softly, a quiet, deliberate sound that conveyed both calm and resolve. "I've spent years breaking walls without anyone's help. Every time you relied on them, I watched and learned. Their control was never real." Ethan swallowed hard, realizing his usual strategies of charm and leverage were useless. He wanted to storm off, but he lingered, hoping I'd falter. I didn't. Meanwhile, my parents lingered at the edge of the gala, observing from a distance. Their calculated smiles betrayed a mix of irritation and disbelief. For decades, they had believed they could orchestrate reality, manipulate appearances, and ensure their children followed the script they wrote. But now, standing in front of their eyes, I had rewritten the narrative entirely. Over the following weeks, I executed a subtle but deliberate strategy. I tightened my professional operations, rejecting flattering but meaningless meetings, focusing only on collaborations that propelled my work forward. I hired a small, trusted team that valued substance over spectacle. Ethan continued to flounder, making awkward attempts to connect with potential partners, offering introductions he barely controlled, or name-dropping connections he thought might impress. Every gesture revealed his inexperience and dependence on others' authority. My parents escalated their tactics. They volunteered for panels I was on, attended events in which my work was highlighted, and made strategic statements to local media, always framing Ethan as a rising star. But their manipulations were transparent, their presence increasingly irrelevant. I, on the other hand, began quietly gathering evidence, not for drama or revenge, but to illustrate the reality of my upbringing and the favoritism I endured. Invitations I had sent to my graduation, screenshots of social media celebrating Ethan while ignoring my accomplishments, and documented instances of their dismissals, all compiled into a factual, unemotional dossier. Then came the opportunity I had been preparing for, a major industry symposium. My company was delivering a case study on stage attended by investors, partners, and civic leaders who mattered. I reserved a large space, organized a live demo, and, most importantly, planned a short documentary-style montage. It showcased real testimonials from users and beneficiaries of my work, stories that highlighted impact rather than spectacle. But I also included another layer, factual evidence of the neglect and favoritism I had endured, dates, invitations, social media posts, and past interactions all documented with precision. No dramatization, no emotional manipulation, just facts. The day of the symposium, the room buzzed with anticipation. I noticed my parents sitting in the back, poised, perfect in their appearance, but tense beneath the surface. Ethan hovered nearby, anxious and out of place. The presentation went flawlessly. Technical details, impact stories, live demonstrations, all executed with precision. Applause was genuine, earned by effort and results. Then I cued the montage. Faces filled the screen. Students whose after-school programs had been transformed. Healthcare coordinators reporting measurable improvements. Early adopters describing meaningful results. And then, subtly, the timeline shifted. Graduation invitations, ignored RSVP lists, social media posts praising Ethan while dismissing me, and recorded family conversations, all juxtaposed to reveal the pattern. I watched Ethan's expression closely. Confusion, disbelief, panic. My parents' carefully maintained facades began to falter. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she grasped my father's sleeve. My father's jaw tightened, a rigid line of tension across his face. The room fell into a hushed silence, not from spectacle, but from clarity. The pattern of neglect, favoritism, and manipulation was undeniable. I stepped forward, remote in hand, calm, deliberate. "This isn't about retribution," I said, addressing the audience. "It's about recognizing talent that has been overlooked and the consequences of undervaluing those who could make a difference. We can't change the past, but we can acknowledge the truth and learn from it." Ethan opened his mouth to speak, then faltered. "Amelia, this isn't fair. You're twisting this for attention." I met his gaze steadily. "If you want to speak, say it here, in front of everyone. Explain why you and our parents ignored opportunities to support me. Say it now." He hesitated, words caught in his throat. My mother's eyes flickered with fear. My father's face betrayed helplessness. Cameras clicked. The room held its collective breath. I didn't flinch. My hand hovered over the remote, poised to reveal the final, irrefutable piece of evidence, a private recording from years ago, where my parents casually discussed prioritizing Ethan while dismissing me. No theatrics, just the facts. And as the room leaned in, I realized it. The control they had relied on for decades was gone. The narrative had shifted. The rules had changed. And I was ready to see the truth fully acknowledged. The final clip rolled. My parents froze mid-conversation. Laughter caught on camera as they discussed Ethan's latest success while casually dismissing me. The audience's collective intake of breath was palpable. No commentary needed. Truth spoke for itself. Ethan's face went pale. His bravado evaporated, replaced with genuine fear. He stepped back, uncertainty radiating from every line of his body. My mother gripped my father's arm, silent panic flickering across her features. My father's mouth pressed into a thin, rigid line, a rare crack in his otherwise controlled demeanor. I raised the microphone, my voice calm and deliberate. "This isn't about punishment," I said, projecting both authority and composure. "It's about accountability, talent overlooked, opportunities denied, and the subtle, persistent consequences of favoritism. We can't rewrite the past, but we can acknowledge it, learn from it, and ensure it doesn't happen again." A few attendees whispered, nodding in recognition. Others reached for their phones, recording the unfolding truth. I could feel the room leaning forward collectively, captivated by the honesty and precision of the evidence. Ethan tried again. "Amelia, this isn't fair. You're making it public, twisting the story for attention." I didn't flinch. "If you have something to say, speak it here, in front of everyone. Explain why you and our parents ignored opportunities to support me. Say it now." His throat tightened. Words caught somewhere between defensiveness and fear. My mother's hands trembled. My father's jaw flexed in frustration. Even Ethan's usually confident composure was gone, replaced by a mix of awe and panic. I pressed play on the final piece. The clip showed an old family dinner, my parents laughing about Ethan's accomplishments while dismissing me. No dramatics, no embellishments, just documented reality. The room fell silent, the weight of truth undeniable. Ethan's expression crumpled. He whispered, almost to himself, "I don't understand how you did all this without us." I let it hang in the air. The years of neglect, the favoritism, the constant underestimation, all of it had led to this moment. And now he understood. My achievements were my own. No one's approval was necessary, no manipulation would change the truth, and no amount of charm could erase my years of effort and resilience. My parents, for the first time, were stripped of the illusion of control. Their carefully curated narrative of family success and superiority was publicly challenged. Their smiles faded, their practiced composure undone by facts. After the montage, the room erupted in applause, not for the family drama, but for the work I had accomplished and the integrity with which I had presented it. Attendees approached, congratulating me, praising the clarity of my presentation and the tangible impact of my work. I smiled politely, quietly savoring the victory that was entirely mine. Ethan lingered for a moment, desperate for some acknowledgement or foothold, but the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. He realized, painfully, that no apology, charm, or manipulation could regain control. He had nothing I didn't earn myself, and his attempts to leverage family influence had failed spectacularly. In the days and weeks that followed, my parents attempted subtle maneuvers, calls, emails, invitations, but I remained steadfast. No contact, no forgiveness, no compromise. Their manipulations now fell flat, transparent to everyone around them. Ethan tried to network via my contacts, but his lack of genuine experience became painfully obvious, and his efforts quietly collapsed. I focused entirely on my work. My firm grew faster than I had imagined, driven by innovation, credibility, and genuine impact. Investors and partners recognized not only the technology, but the integrity of the founder behind it. My life was no longer measured by their approval or influence. 1 year later, a single text arrived from Ethan. "How did you do it?" I didn't respond. He already knew the answer. And more importantly, so did my parents. The narrative had changed irreversibly. Their control was gone, their influence diminished, and the consequences of years of favoritism and neglect were fully apparent. I was thriving, independent, unassailable in my field, and free from the manipulation that had shadowed my early life. The lesson was complete. Overlooking, undervaluing, or enabling entitlement came with consequences. And for the first time in my life, I felt fully liberated. The months after the gala were quieter, but far from idle. My name, Amelia Hartley, was finally associated not with family drama or unacknowledged potential, but with real achievement. At 28, I had earned a reputation as someone who could deliver results without needing validation from those who had once overlooked me. My mornings began early, coffee in hand, reviewing progress reports from my team. The office hummed with a quiet energy, a far cry from the tense, performative environment I'd endured under my family's shadow. Each success felt mine, untainted by favoritism or obligation. I smiled, realizing how rare that sensation was, pure pride without compromise. Ethan's attempts at contact dwindled. First came polite messages, then hesitant emails, then silence. He had to come to terms with the fact that I didn't need his approval, and that years of reliance on parental favoritism had left him ill-prepared to compete on merit alone. I felt no bitterness, only clarity. Our paths were separate now, and that was enough. My parents reached out once more, this time with a carefully crafted, almost rehearsed apology. They spoke of family, of misunderstandings, of wanting to reconnect. I read their messages and then deleted them. There was no reconciliation to be had. Not yet. Perhaps never. Accountability, I had learned, was more powerful than forgiveness when trust had been systematically broken. Outside of work, life felt full for the first time. Weekends were no longer dominated by the quiet dread of being overshadowed. I could meet friends, explore hobbies, and travel without the constant mental weight of family expectations. The sense of liberation was profound, almost intoxicating. One evening, while reviewing an expansion proposal, I thought back to the years of subtle neglect, the overlooked birthdays, and the constant comparisons to Ethan. A soft smile crept across my face. Every insult, every omission, every calculated slight had taught me patience, strategy, and resilience. In the end, those years had not broken me. They had prepared me. At the office holiday gala, I caught a glimpse of someone in the back. Ethan, standing awkwardly, trying to look casual. I didn't approach him, didn't even acknowledge him, beyond a polite nod. He understood, finally, that the old dynamics no longer existed. He had nothing left to manipulate, nothing left to leverage, and the lesson of underestimation had been delivered in full. The future stretched wide before me, filled with projects I cared about, people I respected, and achievements I had earned on my own. For the first time, I felt the true meaning of success: autonomy, recognition for effort, and peace of mind. Amelia Hartley had finally stepped out of the shadow of favoritism, entitlement, and expectation. She had faced her past, confronted those who had underestimated her, and emerged stronger, not just in career, but in character. In the end, the victory wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about proving to myself that my life, my work, and my worth could never be dictated by neglect or partiality. That freedom, that undeniable sense of self, was the real triumph. And with that, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The world was mine, and for the first time, I knew I didn't need anyone's approval to claim it.